Monet is dead. Because of you!
Noma's coming for us, you know that, right?
Every time y'all do some shit and leave me out, it gets fucked up!
Carter has something on you, then you need to get something on him.
Davis, we're fucked.
We decide what happens next.
Hi and welcome to Butter Movies. Power Book 2, Ghost Season 4 has not been as strong as prior seasons, and that's not a controversial opinion. There have been some stronger hours, or at least ones that were entertaining, but if you had to grade the overall season up to this point, anywhere from a C- to a B- sounds about right. But this hour? This one? This was easily the best hour of the season and one of the best ones of the entire season. Now, what do all solid episodes of Power Ghost have in common? They typically follow the Power model, a solid mix of humor, drama, action, and plot lines that may have felt all over the place but intersected dynamically. That's precisely what happened here, as the lead up to Noma and Cane's sham wedding featured a plethora of surprises and a hell of an ending. Noma and Cane's domestic partnership was always born out of need, as the two have gotten further away from romance. Noma needed an American husband, and Cane needed the connections Noma could give him. And just like that, a mutually beneficial partnership was born. Teaming up with Carter was a way for Noma to take back some control, and for Carter, it was surely a payday and a way to get rid of his problems. Noma's plan didn't fully compute with me at first because she seemed so hell-bent on making sure everything was perfect, insisting that Monet come to the rehearsal dinner, even when things started to spiral out of control. But it was ingenious because she knew how Monet would react and behave. She knew that Monet would not come in happy and supportive of her son's marriage, which would later give her a reason to play pretend with Cane and use her past actions as the reason she didn't attend the wedding. Cane would think Monet truly didn't support him and his actions, while instead, she was dead somewhere on Staten Island. But Noma overplayed her hand, as we'll get to. She also had no idea what the bond between the Tejadas was because she'd only ever seen it from the perspective of them trying to take one another down. Monet has always prioritized family, but much of that was not rooted in a real need to prioritize her family. It was to prioritize herself. Monet isn't the worst parent we've ever seen on Power, but she wasn't a good one either. She did what she thought was best for the Tejadas, but only if it benefited her. She forced her children to follow her lead, even when it was far from in their best interests, because it was what she needed. This season has been perhaps the first time she's shown herself to think truly beyond her own needs and desires. She's asked of them instead of demanded. She's met them in the middle rather than forcing things upon them. It's been a fascinating change for Monet, who's changed subtly while still staying true to herself. Her apology to Cane felt out of place in the moment because she's been all over him all season. So, for her to suddenly throw down the gloves and just tell him he's a good son certainly came across as a bit awkward. But you also knew that at this point, they were going to throw things out that may not make sense because of how close we were to the finish line. Monet and Cane have always been the closest within the Tejada circle, mainly because Cane stepped up in a way for the business once Lorenzo was gone that Drew and Diana weren't capable of and didn't want to do. Their bond was permanently cemented with loyalty to one another, and you could tell in that conversation that their loyalty to one another would never shake. They could be estranged and drag each other from sunrise to sunset, and it wouldn't really matter because if there was a choice to be mad between each other and anyone else outside the family, there wouldn't really be a choice. When you think about it, the Monet and Cane dynamic, more so than Monet with Drew or Diana and the siblings with each other, was always at the core of the family. So, it being on full display in those closing minutes was fitting and heartbreaking all at once. But the lead up to that moment only came about because Noma and Carter got a little too cutesy with their plans to remove the thorns in their sides. Sending Monet and Tariq to Staten Island so Vadim could kill them was a clever idea, but it should have been something no one else knew. Why did the random men who gave Drew the money know about Tariq going there? What are we doing here, Carter? I thought this was a serious operation. Monet mentioning to Janet in passing that she was going to Staten Island was obviously the biggest blessing in disguise, as was Diana and Drew conveniently being in the right place to overhear Effie and receive the information. But it's Power. None of these people would still be alive if luck weren't on their side now and then. Dru and Diana have turned themselves into solid soldiers. We've seen from Dru all season that he's more than prepared and ready to get his hands dirty and step up, but Diana has also shown that she's brave. The conversation between the two in between body shots and lap dances was too short, but both needed to just let themselves be honest about how they were feeling. Dru has embraced the side of himself that Lorenzo always saw. And Diana? Well, Diana is confused, and she's trying to make sense of her life and what she wants. That's normal coming off a loss and what she did, but it's not easy to put a voice to that. These stories will be wrapped up so soon, and it sucks because there's still so much story to mine there. There is still so much. Again, what would the ramifications of that be for Davis? And where could he go from there? We won't know because there's just no time. Why does everyone have to make a big show before killing people? With Effie there to wipe the tapes or whatever she was going to do, why didn't Tariq just shoot Carter through the confessional window and be on his way? You never give someone a chance to talk themselves out of being murdered. That's like Power 101. Of course, Carter got into Tariq's head and dropped the bomb on him, which set everything else in motion that would happen later at the wedding. I knew the Zion video would come back one way or another, but Carter has to go. And somehow, they compounded their problems by not killing him but injuring him and tying him up in some abandoned location. Everyone has been ragging on Braden this season, and I do get it, but at least he comes ready to do something. Maybe it's stupid, but he's the first to declare himself available when a war gets going. I don't know what they do with Carter now, but if he survives this season, that would be the biggest surprise in Power's history. I'm exaggerating, but he simply can't live, and we lose others. I won't allow it. You know who else has got to go? Noma. I've actually had enough of her, and everything that's happened falls on her shoulders. I hope Cane and the Tejadas bring hell down upon her. Why in the world she thought Cane would ever choose her over Monet is beyond me, and going through all the trouble she went through for that messiest end result was incredibly dumb. I would say that getting in a shootout during your very fake wedding that you need to help keep your business afloat would be her demise, but she won't make it out of this series alive. Tariq has enough information from Anya to know how Noma will move next, and the Tejadas will take it from there. Noma getting the pleasure of killing Monet, even if she can only revel in it for a little while, shouldn't upset me, but it does. Noma finally got her revenge for Mecca and everything else, and it sucks. Cane, Dru, and Diana loved their mother for all their words and actions. Monet, for all her various faults, which were plentiful, loved those kids deep, deep down. She just never knew how to be in the life and be a mother. It was as if she couldn't be both. It's a shame it took her so long, up until her final moments, to realize it was possible to protect her babies differently. It never had to be like it was, but if there were ever a group of people ready to burn the whole city down in revenge and get away with it, well, that would be the trio of Tejadas. It's hard to imagine there won't be more significant, painful deaths before it's over, but this one hurt more than even I thought possible. But Monet went out as she lived, shooting truly is in what they're doing. Everything Monet is doing feels too late. The damage has been done, and she's dealing with adults with their own lives and ambitions. They no longer feel the pressure and need to conform to their mother's wishes. Cane's got his own thing going on. Diana's been saying she's out and being with child, there's less insistence she put herself in danger. And Dru, well, he's always had one foot out the door, and he's ready to move the hell on now. Props to Dru for being the one person to hold Monet accountable. He's said what he's felt, splitting ultrasound photos. Not to mention Tariq lying to her face about Salim. It was shocking to hear Tariq come out and tell Diana his plans to be the big dog in town, as if that was supposed to impress her or excite her after all the loss she'd recently incurred and the danger she'd been in. These two trying to navigate their relationship with zero trust or affection and then successfully co-parent in the future seems like something that will never happen. It makes you wonder whether Tariq will rethink his plans for total bloodshed. Hint, the answer is no. Diana was not the only Tejada with a choice to make. Monet decided that she was finally ready to step up, put on her world's best mom hat, and reunite a family that had been fractured beyond repair. Power shows can be so comical in the way they have people ready to fight to the death and then turn around soon after that and have them talking about the depth of familial bonds and the need for everyone to put aside attempted murder and come together for the greater good. Much like Tariq, she had a decision to make about her next move, and just like Tariq, she chose the business, though she sprinkled in some talk about the business being second to family that I don't believe for a second. Monet doesn't want to leave the business because it's all she knows. It's scary to start over. We watch Tariq have to sweep a floor with disgust for a single shift and then balk at the idea of a life spent in honest work. Even if her intentions are in the right place, this belief that Monet can balance the business and her family in some new way feels misguided at best. And it got off to the worst start possible. For all those who knew there was something majorly off about Detective Carter, I'm currently slow-clapping in your honor because not only is that man dirty, but he's also unwell. Carter has been laser-focused on Tariq and Monet, and while he appeared to be after them because he wanted to rid the streets of drugs and make New York a safer place, he had a rather twist. As if things weren't bad enough already for Tariq, Braden, and the Tejadas, it got a lot worse in Episode 7 of Power Book 2, Ghost Season 4. The episode begins with Diana in the hospital as she discovers that Felicia's brutal attack on her resulted in the death of Tariq and Diana's baby. Though he initially sought revenge from her, Tariq decided against it, but Diana went through with it and eventually kills Felicia. Her dead body is discovered by Detective Carter after he rushed to Felicia's home in hopes of saving her. Carter walks into the house to see Diana, Tariq, and Monet where it comes close to killing them all. Thankfully for them, Dru'S' decision to help Carter after his release from prison is what saved Diana, Tariq, and Monet's. As for what happens next, well, that will be on display in Episode 8. Here's what you need to know about it. Tariq and Monet try to leverage a way to get out from under Carter by making a play to Noma. Positioned on opposite sides, Cane and Dru'S compete for the streets. An incident with Braden's relationship with Il sends him off the deep end as he goes from puppy to pitbull. On this week's Power Book 2, Ghost, we learn that Cane and Noma are getting married. What is that registry going to look like? Noma's tap dance to secure a government contract without getting caught by the feds is second only to Carter's fancy footwork as he tries to convince Nico that Felicia died in a car crash and not in a heinous beatdown in her own kitchen. How long, do you think, before this all blows up in his face? Oh, and a Sopranos alum shows up as Effie's mom. Carter tells his team that Felicia died in a car crash, but Nico doesn't believe him. What the F.K. really happened, he whispers once he has Carter cornered at the precinct. Power Book 2, Ghost Season 4 has not been as strong as prior seasons, and that's not a controversial opinion. There have been some stronger hours, or at least ones that were entertaining, but if you had to grade the overall season up to this point, anywhere from a C- to a B- sounds about right. But this hour? This one? This was easily the best hour of the season and one of the best ones of the entire season. Now, what do all solid episodes of Power Ghost have in common? They typically follow the Power model, a solid mix of humor, drama, action, and plot lines that may have felt all over the place but intersected dynamically. That's precisely what happened here, as the lead up to Noma and Cane's sham wedding featured a plethora of surprises and a hell of an ending. Noma and Cane's domestic partnership was always born out of need, as the two have gotten further away from romance. Noma needed an American husband, and Cane needed the connections Noma could give him. And just like that, a mutually beneficial partnership was born. Teaming up with Carter was a way for Noma to take back some control, and for Carter, it was surely a payday and a way to get rid of his problems. Noma's plan didn't fully compute with me at first because she seemed so hell-bent on making sure everything was perfect, insisting that Monet come to the rehearsal dinner, even when things started to spiral out of control. But it was ingenious because she knew how Monet would react and behave. She knew that Monet would not come in happy and supportive of her son's marriage, which would later give her a reason to play pretend with Cane and use her past actions as the reason she didn't attend the wedding. Cane would think Monet truly didn't support him and his actions, while instead, she was dead somewhere on Staten Island. But Noma overplayed her hand, as we'll get to. She also had no idea what the bond between the Tejadas was because she'd only ever seen it from the perspective of them trying to take one another down. Just like Dru', Diana is set on putting herself first and prioritizing her wants and needs. This means putting herself and her future child above the needs of her family for once. In order to do that, Diana can't compromise for the sake of Tariq. If Tariq can't make the necessary sacrifices in order to create a safe life for their child, then there's no point in Diana trying to make things work. We saw how things ended with Ghost as well as with Lorenzo and Dante Emeka. Diana doesn't have to be the next to experience it. The moment we knew would come finally arrived for Tariq in Power Book 2, Ghost Season 4, Episode 5 titled Ego Death. Actually, it was two moments. The first is Noma finally caught onto Tariq and Braden's underground drug operation through college parties. She discovered it after finding a bag of coke in her daughter Anya's bag after the same bag of coke was brought to her and said to have come from Stansfield. Noma walks into the next college party with Cane to see the operation live in action, and though their plan is to kill Tariq, they're forced to put a stop to it after Tariq uses Anya as a distraction. The second moment is Tariq finally accepting that he is no different from his father. After a string of events that knocked him off his path, Tariq realizes that he needs to use his dad's qualities to become an apex predator to stand at the top of the drug game and ensure the safety of himself and loved ones like Braden and his mother Tasha. Despite this realization, Tariq still doesn't fully see how similar he is to Ghost. Just like his father, Tariq is quite inconsiderate to the needs of loved ones around him, and he can't seem to prioritize their issues as he does his own. When Braden voices his issues during an argument with Tariq, they get brushed aside as Tariq tells him to take this *T on the chin like I do every day. Later on, Tariq expects Diana to be okay with him being deep in the drug game as they raise their child, as opposed to pretending to be out of it like Ghost did. In each case, Tariq put his needs and desires above Braden's and Diana's without considering Monet nearly lost 2 more children in episode 4 of Ghost as both Cane and Tariq were in pursuit of Dru' and Diana, respectively, in retaliation for trying to kill Monet and set up Tasha for a death of her own. When Monet learned of Diana's pregnancy, she immediately called off Cane moments before he would have killed Dru', and she also convinced Tariq not to do the same to Diana. Now, it's time to put the family back together, but Monet wants to do it the easy way. The drug game is what tore her family apart, but now, Monet is hoping that it can bring her family back together. Realistically, that is the easy route towards rebuilding the family. Effie's mother, played by the sopranos Drea de Matteo, ambushes her on the Stansfield campus, calls her Josie, and announces that her husband has left her for some young bimbo that works at the car company. She says she's broke and is wondering if Effie can float her some money. The man that molested me left you, Effie says flatly. Sounds like a can you problem. Her mom continues to gush about how proud she is of Effie, but it doesn't land. If you were on fire, Effie says, I wouldn't piss on you to put you out. She says some more in the same gist, which causes her mom to drop the nice act. There she is, cold-hearted Josefina, she says, you're a real bitch. How is anyone ever gonna love you? Effie delivers the fake social media history to Cane for approval, but all he wants to talk about is how she has the wrong idea about him and Noma. She laments that she's always had to take care of herself, to which he replies, I've got you. Braden moves out of Tariq's place, saying he's going to move in with Elle, because he loves her. Tariq mocks him, saying he barely knows her. They argue a bit more about what Braden's doing with their various business enterprises. I'm moving fast and smart, and T's working. Pretty soon, Jackson and Effie are summoned to Noma's, and they both are shocked to hear the big news. Our nuptials need to appear rock solid, so any dalliance between you two is now over, Noma informs Effie. Adding insult to injury, Noma instructs Effie to create a social media profile for Cane so he looks legit. Effie acts like she doesn't care. Since Noma won't help Tariq and company take down Carter, they pivot. New plan is to give Carter all of their leverage on Noma. And for that, they need Davis' help, and after some initial hesitance, he declares his allegiances with them. He lets them know that Aircraft Global, a front business, washes her drug money. But she's under too much scrutiny in Europe, so she needs an American citizen to own the front so she can get the government contracts she wants. And a prenup will protect her assets. Davis tells them about Sterling Reynolds, who works in the commerce department.